Hello and welcome to the Bucket Lister podcast. Join your host Keith Crockford along with special guests who have travelled the world, here to share stories of their adventures and plenty of inspo to add to your bucket list. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. I am your host Keith Crockford and today I'm chatting with Lauren Page. Hello Lauren.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Lauren's just come back from a lovely last minute trip to Canada. How was that, Lauren?
Yeah, it was brilliant. I went to Banff, so that was really nice. I haven't been there before. Went on a little ski trip, saw some family. Yeah, it was really good. Took my camera with me also, got some nice pictures. So yeah, it was really good.
So anyone that follows the Bucket List company will be seeing a lot more of Lauren because Lauren has just come to work for us as our new content creator in our marketing department. We're obviously very good at what we do at the Bucket List company because Hannah, who we had before, has moved on to pastures new and gone off traveling to Australia for 2 years. So obviously the inspiration that she gained from being at the Bucket List company has given her that want to go and see new things. But we're lucky enough to have found Lauren. And I mean, the job really, Lauren, kind of came about perfect timing for you, didn't it?
Oh, it was ideal. I mean, I'd just come back from Australia, after 2 years away. So I've done it the opposite way around to Hannah. But yeah, I'd just come back. I was moving back down to Cornwall, and obviously I love travel, having been away for a couple of years. So it's just like the perfect job for me, perfect timing. And means I can live in Cornwall, which I think is one of the best places ever too. So if I'm not going to be off travelling all the time, I reckon Cornwall's the place to be with this job where I can live through everyone else.
Yeah, so we're hoping that you stay a while as well at the Bucket List company,
Yes.
and we don't give you too much inspiration to head off again. But the whole purpose of this podcast is I want to talk about travel photography. And one of the reasons why we employed Lauren in the content creator role is because she is an experienced travel photographer. And obviously, you know, that was something that we were looking for. Obviously, we've got so much content that we get from our trips, and having someone who's got an eye for that as well is super important to us. And maybe if you've been looking at our socials over the last couple of months since Lauren's been on board, you might have seen some changes on our Instagram, etc. as well. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about how you guys on your trips can take better video photos to remember the experiences you're having. Now, obviously, when you go away on these trips, you kind of want to document your experience. And, you know, I always have my camera with me. I always have my phone with me. And I think that's the biggest thing, Lauren, isn't it? You know, if you go back 10 years, times have now changed of, you know, being a travel photographer or just being a keen photographer. It's so much easier now with technology in that you've always got that camera in your pocket.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially with how much like the cameras on our phones have developed and everything. You don't even necessarily need a crazy setup to be able to take really nice photos or videos. Just change a couple of settings on your phone and it's super easy to get the type of content that someone would on a DSLR or something. Maybe not quite to that extent, but still it's pretty easy to do and to get nice photos too. You just need to get those right angles.
And I think that's the biggest thing, isn't it? Is you could go and give a very good photographer a instant camera and they would create a lovely image, or you could go and give someone that's got no clue about photography the most expensive DSLR in the world with the most amazing lens on it, and they come back with something that looks like a 5-year-old's taking it. And I think that's the biggest thing with photography, isn't it? It's not just about holding the camera up and shooting something. So what advice would you give to people of how to take better photo? So let's say it's a landscape, for example. Like what would you say to someone about taking that photo?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, first of all, take as many photos as possible because you're more likely to get one that you'll actually like or like the look of. I guess pick kind of a main focal point of the photo, what you want to be in the center. And to begin with, just focus on that and play with kind of taking it from a higher angle or a lower angle because that makes such a big difference in how the photo will look. Look for things like, I don't know, say if you're in a forest, there's loads of green shrubbery around you, and then you've got an amazing mountain in the background or something. Kind of play with having parts of the photo kind of closer to the camera that are maybe blurred, and then the background, the mountain in that example, in that's really defined and not blurred, for example. Just switch around with things like that, I reckon. Like I said, the angles too, especially if you're not kind of changing the settings in terms of shutter speed, things like that, then I reckon those are the main points to look for. A couple of angles, couple of different parts of the photo in the close up, some further away, and take as many photos as possible because you're more likely to get one you actually like. And do you know what? I think I used to think that these photographers that I would look at, like when I was younger, I used to think they didn't edit a single photo. I thought, oh my gosh, they've just got such an eye for it that everything looks amazing. But I think loads of kind of a photo looking amazing is it down to the editing at the end. So
Yeah, I mean, like if someone's listening to that now, like I know someone's going to be listening to this podcast, and now we've come on to editing. My
yeah,
phone, as she listens to it, is going to beep with her chuckling because she always says about my photos that, like, they're over edited, or like
right.
that's not what she saw when she was stood there. I think, but when it comes to editing, for me, it's about what your photo looks like to you. Like editing is a
Yeah.
very personal thing, isn't it?
Oh, it's so personal. And also, I think your style changes so much over time. Like, I look back at some photos I took a few years ago and I'm like, oh my goodness, I would never edit it in that way now. So I think it's such a personal thing. But also, say you're shooting for a brand, then you have to edit in the way that the brand wants rather than something you're interested in, which is obviously quite a difficult thing to do, I think, because, I might think, oh, I don't like how that looks, but actually, a brand would want it in that way. So yeah, the editing afterwards is definitely a process, and I think you learn so much just over time, kind of working out what works for you, what doesn't work, and then also, like I say, what an outside audience might prefer. Because it's not always what we like. I remember I had a phase of editing quite like dark, grainy type of way. And realistically, that's not what everyone loves. Luckily, I've moved on from that. But at the time, it was kind of the process of working out if that's what the brand would like, or if that's what other people would like too. But it's definitely a very personal thing.
Yeah, and I think in nowadays, like Photoshop or Lightroom, for anyone that's kind of into photography a little bit,
Mm,
is an art form in itself. But editing on your mobile device now is just so simple to make some corrections to something, or
yeah.
even to crop it to give
Mhm.
it that. Oh, actually, I don't want that person in that corner. I want to crop that out so it makes more of a natural flow.
Mm,
And I think it's just so easy to get on your mobile phone now and go into the edit function and just play with all of the settings and see what it does to your photo and go. And I think that's the lovely thing about it, is you can sit there and go, well, let's move that across to there. Oh yeah, actually I like that, or I don't like
yeah.
that. Right, reset and start again. Like,
Yeah.
it's so easy with digital photography now, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. And like with videos as well, with your phone, if you kind of just stand somewhere, don't move, take a video of what's in front of you. I don't know, if you were making a reel or something, then kind of putting these clips together in very basic videos, I suppose, just looks really put together, and it's just so easy. Um, And you can also change some settings on your iPhone, like I mentioned before, to make the quality better too. Super easy, like on the top right corner of an iPhone, you can change the video quality settings. So yeah, it's just one of the easiest things to do. And like you say, cropping a photo is easy. You've even got the auto kind of enhance buttons too. So
Even if that's all you do and give that auto enhance a click, it just makes a difference to your photo, doesn't it?
yeah, and I always used to think it was kind of cheating, but do you know what? It just isn't, because if it's making a photo look that little bit more kind of special or bright, then I think it's really cool. And also, you know, cameras are never going to 100% pick up what you see with your eyeballs, so we might as well try and replicate what we see as much as possible.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference, these days are like what you can do with night photography on an iPhone, or it used to be that you used to have to have a DSLR camera with a wide angled lens with a low aperture and you used to have to stick it on a tripod and stick it there for a minute without it moving to be able to capture that night sky. But now you can literally hold your phone up to the sky, take a photo on your iPhone, and you get this amazing night sky image in seconds.
It's crazy, isn't it?
And it's really important what you said as well about taking loads of photos. And for anyone that's listened to the podcast before, you know that I love my underwater photography. And I did a course a few years ago with a friend of mine, Lee. And, one thing he said was, like, you never get the chance to go back and recapture the photo later on. It's much easier for you to delete 100 photos and have the one you want, rather than going, oh, I wish I just tried that, or I wish I just tried this while I was there, because you're not going to have that opportunity again. And I think the other big takeaway that I took away from Lee is that editing takes quite a lot of time, and ultimately, you only want to spend your time editing a small amount of photos. You're not going to go and sit there and edit all of them and then decide. No. It's that kind of quick, right, let's take them all, let's have a look through them all, let's bin 95% of them and work out which ones that I really, really like. And then let's spend the time editing those images.
Yeah, exactly. I also sometimes find that, I don't know, say we've got 100 photos and I cut it down to 10 that I actually like, which is quite a lot anyway. Even if I don't edit all of those 10, I might keep them. But then, I don't know, 6 months later, I'll go back to it, have a look through my Lightroom or whatever I'm editing on. And then I'll think, oh, actually, I can see something in that photo that I quite like, and edit it in a certain way. And so it's nice because you can go back to them and change them as well. It's not like it's just set like that forever. But it's definitely worth taking as many photos as possible and as many videos as possible, because I think then you definitely capture what you're after, rather than, like you say, going back and never being able to kind of take that photo again or that video again.
Yeah. I mean, what kit do you take with you when you go away traveling? So what would you have in your camera bag, in essence?
Yeah, I've got a couple of lenses, for example, that I took on this trip to Canada. So take my camera, obviously. I've got a Canon 5D Mark V, I think. And then I always take one lens that's got a decent zoom on it, and then I have one that's more of a kind of fisheye type of lens. So in Canada, I was mainly using my long lens because the mountains are incredible and I wanted to get as close as I could to them. But if I'm doing a shoot, that's not necessarily the lens I'll use. So if it's kind of a shoot of people rather than just the travel destination, but someone in that destination, then I'll kind of switch it up. But I reckon keeping it fairly basic when you're traveling is good, just because they're so heavy to carry around that it's, you don't want to take too much in your backpack if you're trekking somewhere, do you? So probably keep it to 2 lenses. If you've got a bit of extra room, you could always take a tripod, but most of the time, if you're just doing still photography, doesn't matter if you're a bit shaky or a bit tired. If you're taking videos, then probably be a different situation.
Yes, I mean you're using a standard DSLR there, which is a big bulky camera. It is quite a heavy camera. Like I've switched from a DSLR to a mirrorless now, so mine's a lot more compact. And I'm pretty much the same. Like I've got I call it my travel lens, which goes from 24 to 240, so it kind of gives me the best coverage. And then I've got a 10 to 18 mil lens as well, which is great for shooting kind of wide angled stuff if I'm doing scenery stuff or whatever. So that's great advice in terms of you don't want to be, lenses are heavy, glass is really heavy, you don't want to be carrying lots with you unless potentially you are going on to a safari trip. And I think that's and that's where I will say like phone cameras are great, but if you really are going on a trip like a safari or something like that, then actually the zoom on your phone, like once you go past a certain extent, is just super blurry, and any movement on the camera on your phone itself just makes it like look a blurred mess, doesn't it? And that's where a DSLR or a mirrorless camera really does come into its own. And I'm heading off on the gorilla trekking trip in a couple of weeks' time. And I mean, I was so gutted the last time I was on safari because there was a great cheetah in a tree, but I just could not reach it with the zoom that I had, even with the 240 zoom. I could see it, but so I've actually, and that's the other thing now as well, is like I've actually hired a lens to go away to Uganda with. The lens itself to buy is like £2,200, which kind of I'm not going to use it all that option. And for a couple of £100, I can rent it for the 2 weeks and give it back. But I would certainly suggest to people that if you are going to go and do a safari style trip, then if you want to be recording your memories, then a good camera is a must. Then
it's definitely worth it. And like you said, renting's such a good idea. I was going to do that a couple of years ago now. I looked into it, and it's just a way also for you to kind of see if you like that lens, if you work well with it, that type of thing. But for sure, if you're going on a safari or something, it's just so worth taking an actual camera with you, or if a friend has one that they'll let you borrow or something like that, because then you'll really get up close to the animals without obviously getting in their way. So it's a really good idea.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, again, it depends what your interest in photography is, isn't it? I mean, I love photography and I love showing my photos off when I get home and printing them out and doing things with them. So for me, having the camera and being able to edit it and, being able to have a long lens on it so I can see, so you get a really clear, crystal clear, get, zoomed in as much as you can. I think is really important for me. I mean, I'm not saying that's for everyone. Like, we're not expecting, if you book a safari trip that you all need to go out and get 600 mil lenses that are, $2.5 grand each, like not at all. But I just think like, depending on what you want to do, like, I think from my perspective, I wouldn't be happy with my results on a safari if I just took my iPhone with me. I think that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. And I think, like you say, it's a personal thing. I've noticed there's a bit of kind of maybe a trend, I guess, at the minute with photography where lots of people are using kind of old school digital little cameras or film cameras. That's definitely pretty big right now, I'd say. So if you're not after the big zoom that kind of we might be for a safari, some people can still take some really creative, cool photos using kind of standard cameras too, and standard lenses and things. I think if you kind of are picking different angles and maybe researching a little bit into it before as well, you can still get some really interesting photos that are kind of worth printing out or showing off, as you say. So yeah.
And I think, another thing that like I started to do a couple of years ago was actually doing some research on the destination before I went out in terms of photography. So almost looking at what other, so go onto Instagram and look at the hashtag of the destination you're going to and just seeing what other people are taking in that destination. So you can kind of go, I like that. And it just gives you some ideas of, oh, they obviously created that photo by doing this or taking it from that angle. So when I go out there, I want to try and replicate that as well.
Yeah. Oh, taking advice from other people or inspiration from other people, I think, is really important in terms of being creative with photography anyway, because I guess we're all limited to a certain kind of opinion or view on how we might take photos or something that we're used to. So going on Instagram or Pinterest as well would be really good for that kind of, taking inspiration from other travel bloggers. I think is a really, really good idea. I definitely find it's easier to be creative with that type of thing when you have inspiration from other people or other people. I follow so many photographers on Instagram because I just know that they're going to be posting amazing things and you can always learn from other people. So I think it's a really good idea, especially because there's so many travel photographers out there now, even using things like drones and stuff too. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about video then as well, because obviously a lot of people, in the days of Instagram, in Reels, in TikToks, like video has become more and more on people's agendas. It's much more easy for people to capture video now. It's not like the old days where you used to have the camcorder to get a video clip. Like you can get one in your pocket now.
Yeah.
But in terms of we get a lot of people on trips who maybe will take an action camera with them. So either like the DJI Osmo or, the standard GoPro. Like, what's your view on those sorts of cameras?
Yeah. I think they're definitely, you can get older versions of them as well, can't you? So they're definitely probably more affordable than a huge chunky camera like I was talking about my one before. It's easy to take with you. Obviously, they come with, they're either waterproof or have little waterproof cases, which again is much easier than getting full water housing for a huge chunky camera like mine. Just the process of it, I think, is easier, and you can still get some great videos from them that you might not be able to get just on your phone. Plus, I guess it's a bit too risky taking the water resistant phones in the ocean, isn't it? But yeah.
I think you're dead right. And I think the GoPro, if we look at that one as an example, like GoPro have a very good app on the phone where it will connect to it. It will piece the video clips together. Like you said, they are very rugged in terms of they will take quite a hammering and quite a bashing as well, which generally, when you're away on a trek, you certainly don't want to be getting your digital camera really dusty in terms of your DSLR or your mirrorless. Whereas, with a GoPro, you can just kind of dunk it in a bowl of water and let it dry out, and it's kind of cleaned itself off a little bit. And I think, I've seen so many people who maybe are going trekking and they'll put their GoPro, you can buy a mount that literally clips onto your rucksack strap. So it's just there and you can kind of just start it and stop it as in when you want. So it's actually that looks like a nice view. That's the other thing with video now as well, isn't it? Is you can just grab a screenshot of it and have a photo of it. You could record the video and then take a screenshot and say, well, actually, that's a nice view. I want a picture of that. And then pause it and it's done.
Yeah, super easy. They also have the mounts for helmets if you're skiing, or loads of surfers have the mouthpieces for the GoPros or on the front of their board. Like you said, for trekking, it's super easy if you can just attach it to, I don't know, your jacket or something. And like I was saying before, with videos and photos, always take more than you think, or take a much longer clip than you think, because there's a high chance at the start it might be you fiddling around, pressing play on the camera, or moving around too much that you didn't realize you were doing. So always worth taking an extra long video too. That's something I found. When I was younger, I'd make little videos from our holidays. Just growing up, kind of, on whatever camera I had at the time. And I always regretted not having a long enough chunk of video. So even with the GoPros and stuff, just leave it going for as long as you can. Battery dependent, but
yeah. And that's the other great thing about GoPros and things like that, is the fact that you can just recharge them off offer, a portable battery charger, isn't it? So when you're out trekking for a couple of days, like it's much easier to charge an action camera like a GoPro or an Osmo Pocket or something like that than maybe your digital DSLR batteries, which are going to need to be plugged into the mains, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely easier. And just the whole process is more simple, isn't it? If you've got a GoPro, like you say, charging it, using it's probably a lot kind of easier way to do it, because you're not switching lenses, you're not worrying about all these things, you're just getting some footage that's in front of you. And probably not stressing about it too much, which is also nice.
Yeah, what's your view on memory cards and backing them up on a trip? I mean, I've been away with so many people who have lost their trips photos because they've had a memory card problem or a camera problem.
Yeah.
Like, how do you combat that problem?
I have a hard drive, that connects separately. During the trip, I suppose it's a bit more difficult. You have to kind of hope for the best to a certain extent, or have a couple of different memory cards and spread kind of images throughout those, taking them out, changing them each day just as a precaution, so you still have some if one goes wrong. But yeah, an external hard drive definitely is a good way to go, as long as it's got some decent reviews on it, because I have definitely had an issue before with an external hard drive, where half of the photos for some reason are not showing up. So that's brilliant. But I guess, like I say, use multiple memory cards if you are able to, and back up your photos as you go. I know that I have my Lightroom app on my phone, and if I've got my little what's it called, device thing
USB
plug
connector.
into. Yeah, that, there you go. If I've got that with me, and I say I have a laptop with me, so when I was skiing, I'd have my laptop with me when I got back from the day skiing in Canada. Plug that in, can quickly move all my photos over, so I know that they're on my laptop, or I know that they're on the hard drive, for example. And then it's not really a worry the next day if I'm going to go and drop my camera in the snow. Didn't do that, so that's fine. But yeah, always good to kind of back up as you go if you can. I mean, it's easier said than done, isn't it? But
yeah, I think that's it. I think, like, from my perspective, I think it's, one great tip that I was taught years ago was, you can go and buy memory cards that are absolutely massive now, like 256, 512 gigabytes of, memory on a little plastic card. And actually, like, the advice that was given to me was just buy lots and lots of little ones and change them every day. So even if one of those cards comes corrupt, you only then lose a day's worth of photos. You don't lose a whole trip's worth of photos.
exactly.
And, likewise, you're probably not going to have your laptop with you while you're trekking up to
No.
Kilimanjaro or Everest Base Camp. So having lots of memory cards is a much better way of doing it. And the other one that, if you're going down the mirrorless camera route, which I personally think is, you can change the lenses. They're super lightweight. And they can take a little bit of a battering now compared to what cameras used to do. But have a look for the ones that have a dual card. So actually you put two in there and it sends the photos to both cards. So should you end up with a corrupted card, then the other one hopefully is still fine. But it's much cheaper to go and buy lots and lots of little cards and change them out every day than it is to go and buy one big card that you use for the whole trip and then
risk it going wrong.
Risk it going wrong in that way. Just going back to when we were talking about like setting the scene for a photo. One function that every camera has, and phones have it as well, and you can turn it on your phone, is the grid system. And do you just want to explain the rule of thirds to people in terms of creating a lovely looking photo?
I mean, do you know what? I think obviously these grids where you've got, like you say, the three sections to it, you might want to put kind of your focal point right in the center of the three sections. But sometimes I really do think it's such a personal thing that I could say to anyone, okay, out of the 9 squares that are in front of you, pick the one in the center to have as your focal point. But sometimes just an interesting different angle does make a photo look really cool. So even though obviously that can make taking a photo a lot easier, if you don't really know what you're doing, then I guess that's the type of way to go. And leave, X amount of space above, X amount of space below what you're taking. That's a good thing. But it's also nice to be creative with it. I know that on my camera, I don't have the grid set up. I just kind of have a little bit that shows up when I'm focusing. But I think on the iPhones, using a grid might be a way to make everything more consistent in your photography. Especially if it's
and
something where you
I think from like a beginner's perspective, I think
Mm.
like the horizon and kind of not having the horizon line in the middle of the photo, like things like that, just make it look a much more interesting photo.
Yeah.
Not always having stuff in the center of the photo.
Mm.
And one thing that I was taught a long time ago was how a photo should follow your eye line in respect of, if you're looking from left to right, it kind of tells a story as you're looking at the photo. And I think that's where the grid system can kind of work, is to make sure that everything is in line for that to happen, and make an interesting looking photo.
And
And
different aspects to it.
yeah, not necessarily just, if you're taking a picture of someone, don't have them in the middle, because actually it's just kind of all you're focusing on then is the middle of the photo and actually what your focal point is. But it does, I think it does make interest if you look at the rule of thirds and you understand the rule of thirds, but also at the same time, you can also create the rule of thirds in post-production whilst you're editing it. And by cropping it, you can be like, actually, if I crop that there and move that person so they're actually in the bottom left of the corner, it makes the whole photo a whole lot more interesting.
It always does. When they're to the left or the right, like you say with the rule of thirds, it's definitely kind of mixes up the images you're taking, like I say, rather than just having someone right in the middle. It's a little bit boring sometimes, isn't it? So kind of lining it up in a way where like you said, it's a story. Your eye will focus on, I don't know, say someone in the corner, and then you move across and you've got this amazing background in it too. It kind of pulls them away from being the absolute focal point, but still makes the image interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it depends if you're taking a portrait or someone, or you're taking a group photo where it's just, the whole point is taking a photo of the group, or whether you're taking a photo of, whilst recording this, we've got a picture of Machu Picchu behind us on our screen. And, you could have, where you're stood there in the image, you could have a group there, but actually the main focal point is Machu Picchu in the background, isn't it? Not necessarily the group of people that are stood in front of it.
Add something to it.
And I think the other thing as well is I think that really needs talking about when you're away on a trip, is actually looking after your camera kit as well. I mean, I remember doing Sahara Desert treks with my camera kit, and sand and dust literally gets everywhere. And the last thing you want, if you've got a mirrorless or a DSLR camera system with interchangeable lenses, is dust and sand getting in it.
Yeah, that's just not ideal, is it? When I was in Australia, I did a few kind of shoots on the beach. It's never really a good mix, cameras and sand, but I mean, you got to do what you got to do sometimes. I mean, you can get little like soft kind of, I don't know if you have one, it blows air onto the camera, and then the little fluffy bit to kind of clean out if there is any sand. Hopefully there isn't. But also, if you're changing lenses, I think one of the most important things is to ensure nothing obviously gets in there when you're changing the lens. So that's like one of my biggest kind of priorities when I'm switching it out and making sure, when I was in Canada, I was like, right, there's no snow falling in this section of where I'm stood, so I'm really quickly going to change it. I'm going to move the caps over as quickly as possible so that nothing goes wrong. It's definitely worth having a bit of like padding around your cameras if you've got them in your bag. making sure no water leaks on them, that would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just kind of bring precautions in just in case.
Yeah, and I think that key takeaways there are multiple batteries, isn't it?
Yeah,
Multiple memory. We spoke about memory cards and making sure if something happens to your one battery in your camera while you're away, then that could be a bit of a disaster. Like I carry like 3 or 4 batteries that are always fully charged. So
yeah,
if I don't get the opportunity that night to recharge my camera, it's not a problem. I just switch out the battery. Or you get to that point where you've realized that you forgot to turn your camera off when you take it back out your bag and your camera's almost dead and you haven't got to the bit of the day where you're going to be taking loads of photos. So having those backups of memory cards, batteries, having a cleaning kit, keeping it protected, in a decent camera bag, I think are the main priorities people should be thinking about when they're going on a trip.
Yeah, I mean, even making sure you have a travel adapter plug. I made that mistake once. It was an absolute nightmare. Like my camera was fully out of charge. Luckily, someone I was with had a spare one, so I was like, oh, thank goodness, for me to charge it up. But just make sure you've got an adapter.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly that. And then, ultimately, I think the biggest lesson and it's one that I am terrible with, is actually doing something with the photos when you get back.
Yeah. Editing them, posting them, I guess. It depends what you want to show to people, but I know that my Instagram's a little highlight of each of the different places I've been, whether that's just in England or somewhere tropical. I love to edit photos. It's quite therapeutic as well. Just like going through all the photos, sitting there, having a look at what you've been up to, where you've been, editing them. Lots of people have portfolios too. If you're wanting to get into photography properly, it's definitely worth doing. I have a portfolio, and so updating that is nice. But it's also cool when, people actually print them out and use them. That's something I'm not very good at, but I do have kind of my own little, I guess, travel, I guess, been documenting them on my Instagram, which is nice. And it's probably nice for friends and family to see, I hope. Yeah, it's definitely a
Well,
therapeutic
unless like
process for
me,
me.
I had that on my Instagram until my Instagram got hacked recently and they
Yeah.
removed all of the photos. So my Instagram is currently absolutely empty, with no
Slowly
photos on it
repost.
at all. So
Yeah.
I need to start again. So this first trip this year will be let's get my Instagram back up again. But I've also got I've got a big room in the house that's got a lot of big empty walls on it that
They need to be filled.
to be filled. And I think for last year I built a bar in my garden, quite a big bar in my garden, and we called it the Traveller's Rest. So when I get home from my trips, I've got somewhere to go and relax. And it's been on my agenda to again print out a load of the photos from the trips. And everyone keeps saying, "Oh, that needs to go on the wall in the bar.
Yeah.
That one needs to go on the wall in the bar." So
Yeah.
I think that's a priority for me this year is to get some pictures on the wall from some of the trips as well. Yeah, and then it'll kind of remind me. Yeah, reminisce and remind me of where I've been. But yeah, I mean, the number of times though, Lauren, I'll come back from a trip and I'll be getting ready for the next trip, and I like go and check my memory cards and make sure they're all empty, and then realize that there's a load of photos on there that I've done nothing with since the last trip, and like I might have edited 1 or 2 of them while I was away on the trip, because I kind of do that quite often where I'll get the laptop out and then go, oh, that would make a really nice shot. I'll post that one on socials today because that's like a really nice one. But then I won't do anything with the rest of them. It's just I remember taking the most amazing picture of a lion a couple of years ago on safari, and I just had to edit that one photo that night and post it because it was the most amazing photo. But I kind of forgot about all the other ones, which, although they weren't as good, they were still good photos. I just didn't do anything with them. And, it is a time-consuming thing, isn't it? But if you're going to all that effort of taking these amazing photos, then you should be at least putting them somewhere where someone might have the opportunity to enjoy them.
Yeah, and it's even nice for you to look back on them, isn't it? I did that similar type of thing once. I was on a boat trip in Indonesia, and the first few days, taking all these photos, kind of editing them, going through them. And it got to the last, I think it was about a 12-day trip, got to the last few days and I realised, I haven't actually looked through any of the photos I've been taking every day. Because, I guess it is somewhat time consuming. But equally, it was nice when I got home to then go through, and edit them and do things with them. But like I said before as well, sometimes it is nice coming like back to your camera or back to your laptop, wherever your photos are, seeing that there's a few you kind of forgot about and being like, oh, actually that's quite cool, gonna edit that, or you see it in a different light, I think. So as much as it's not ideal to forget to begin with, it's nice to come back to, even if you're missing out, and then repost them later anyway.
And obviously, for anyone listening that is a bucket list customer that's going away on a trip this year, obviously we want to see their photos, Lauren, don't we? Like, we want to see that, and we want as much. I mean, this year I think is our year of, from our perspective, of user content, user generated content. We want to see a lot of this year. So, like, what advice would you give to people? Obviously we've got quite a big social media following, like, you're looking to put out more and more content, and if someone was to tag us in something, then we'd share that, wouldn't we, across our platforms as well?
Yeah, definitely. We love seeing content from our trips, because then it's that first-hand perspective too of what you guys have got up to. Loads of pictures. Like I said, the tips for when you're away, loads of pictures would be amazing. We would love to see them. Loads of videos that are a little bit longer than you think they need to be would be amazing. And just changing, if you've got an iPhone, the top right-hand setting, you can change it from 30 to 60 just by clicking it. Makes the videos like really good quality, not only for you but also, like I said, we would love to use them for little reels and things, and getting photos of people just having a great time. We love to see it in videos as well, of course. And the views that lots of our bucket listers get to see are not things that many people might get to see. Like we say, it's a bucket list destination. They're going on these incredible once in a lifetime trips, and being able to show other people and maybe it'll encourage other people to want to go on these really, really cool trips. So it's nice to see when, everyone's having an amazing time, where we're all wishing we were on the trips too.
But if people are posting it to their Instagram reel or their TikTok, then tag us in it. You'll share it, and it's just like you say, it's great for us to see in it. We want to see more of that.
Oh yeah, definitely. It just shows how fun these trips can be too. So it's always nice to see everyone's first-hand experience of it and what they actually get up to. Especially those funny little kind of reels and things where it's one of those TikTok travel trends. Those are always really funny to see, I think, and also nice because you could just get to see everyone having a bit of a good time and like joking around. So yeah, it's really cool.
So just make sure, if you're on a bucket list trip, then make sure you are just tagging the bucket list company in those as well, and then we will share them and show everyone else what a lovely time you're having as well. Well, Lauren, thank you ever so much. But before we finish, whenever anybody new comes onto the podcast, my question to them always is, Lauren, what is on your bucket list?
Gosh, I feel like there's quite a few places. The first one that springs to mind is Vietnam. Would absolutely love to go there. I've always been so interested in the history, and then with Cambodia as well. I think it would be so interesting to find out more about that. Definitely one of mine. Also, Sri Lanka is up there right now. It's somewhere I really, really want to go. So those are my kind of bucket list destinations, I reckon, right now.
Perfect. Well, as I did the Vietnam Cambodia trip last year, and it made it into my top 5 of all-time bucket list trips. I think you will thoroughly enjoy it. And also as well, I think you really did hit the nail on the head where you then said about the history and understanding, because as I said on a previous podcast, like, the biggest takeaway from me for that trip was how I thought I knew a lot of stuff about Vietnam and also about Cambodia as well, but actually being there and going through the country and learning about it, like, it wasn't a history trip, but I just felt like I came away off that trip like more knowledgeable than I was before I went. And from that perspective, I really, really enjoyed it. So let's see if we can get you on a Vietnam and Cambodia trip very soon then. Well,
yes, please.
Well, Lauren, thanks again for coming on and sharing some tips of how to get better photos. Hopefully that's given you guys some inspiration that when you are on your next bucket list trip, how you're going to document that and record it to show everybody else at home and make them jealous of what an amazing experience you've just had on your trip. So please, if you've got any questions on any of what we've been talking about today, if you don't know what camera to buy or you want some suggestions, then, obviously we're not proper experts in the field of that, but we'll try and help you as much as we can, or at least give you some pointers on where to look or what we're using. But that's everything from me today. Hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the Bucket Lister podcast, and I will be back next week with another episode. But until then, thanks very much. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. Be sure to click follow to be alerted for next week's episode. For more travel inspiration, check us out at www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk or follow us on socials. See you next time.